Good morning, Facebook. Hello, hello. Adjusting my camera here. Waiting for the notification to go live, which should pop right up. And good morning, everybody. It is Cinco de Mayo. Cinco de Mayo, celebrated, vastly celebrated in America. Not only Mexico, but vastly celebrated in America. And not all Mexican states actually celebrate Cinco de Mayo, which is an interesting thing. We sent an email out yesterday with some interesting statistics on um, on Cinco de Mayo, and I think like 80 million pounds of avocados get eaten today, and $600 million of beer is consumed today in America. Some really some really things you really normally don't think about. So some facts you don't really think about Cinco de Mayo. One thing I thought was interesting was that it is actually an American holiday. I think Congress in 2005 or something said, yeah, we recognize that it's a holiday. So they voted it in. So that was another interesting thing. If you do go out today, be safe, drink good margaritas responsibly, and enjoy yourself. Have a good time. We are going to be open here at Roma time at 5, limited menu and lots of margaritas. Streets are closing down. So that is frozen margaritas. Yeah, frozen, all different flavors. So if you're tuning in live, drop a comment, hashtag live. If it's on the replay, hashtag replay. This is Marcus, your chef on a mission. And today I'm going to talk about a year long in court. I've been going back and forth in court here locally for the last year. Hopefully it's over with. I hope it's over with. I don't think it's over with, but I hope it's over with. Got a ruling in our favor, which is a great thing. And hopefully going forward, this will help other people and legislation here in the town of Warsing. So, both my parents have passed away in the last, I guess, 2.5 years. And my daughter's in the process of buying their house on a short sale, which is taking a long time. So my daughter's living in there. My daughter's maintaining the property and is under contract for her to purchase it. And my mom, on and off, had chickens over the course of years. My mom loved chickens, but she just couldn't maintain the chickens. With 2 or 3 dogs, 2 dogs, and a couple of cats, and her sewing addiction habit, her sewing talent. She just didn't have enough time to take care of chickens. So she would buy chickens and get them some springs, and then realized, as it went along, that she couldn't really take care of these chickens and give them away to a friend. So my mom had chickens on and off. So my daughter loves chickens, and so the first thing my daughter did when she moved in was keep maintaining chickens there, and got a bigger hen house, and moved and just set up a bigger hen house and set up a bigger thing, because my mom always wanted chickens and my daughter loves animals as well. So my daughter put in chickens, and she had maybe 20, almost up to 30 at one time, and she would hatch them. If anybody knows my daughter, she loves animals. So she would hatch. She'd incubate and hatch chickens and then sell the chickens to people for laying hens, and hopefully give away the roosters. But of course, roosters do add up, and so at one point she had a couple of roosters and got rid of them, and then got a couple more and got rid of them. So currently she has no roosters. So the neighbor, if you know where Courtney, my daughter, lives, or where my parents live, they live on Neville Road, which is in the town of Warsing, not the village of Ellenville. And years ago, I don't know, 5-10 years ago, the village kind of changed the town kind of changed their laws on chickens and how many you're allowed to have and the acreage and things like that. The law is not written that well. It's not written that well, so there's, just how you interpret it. So, for example, well, I'll talk about that as we go along here. So, the neighbor was buying eggs from us, from my daughter, was buying eggs, and some of you may be buying eggs from my daughter. So the neighbor was buying a dozen a week, very religiously, a dozen a week, every Friday. We'd either drop it off there, or she'd come into the restaurant here and pick up the eggs. And all of a sudden one day she calls us freaking out that the chickens are in her yard and that they're going to the bathroom in her yard. I said, okay, she called like at 5:30 in the middle of being swamped. This is a year ago, just after COVID hit. So she didn't like our answer, and we had to put up a fence. It took a while to put up a fence, but to get a building permit to put up a fence, you need to actually own the property. And since the bank owns the property, it's hard to get the bank to sign off on doing this. So it's a process where you just can't just throw up a wire fence. You have to go get a building permit, and the owner of the property, I might be the caretaker, but I'm not the actual owner, or Courtney. So we put up a fence anyway because we just had to put up a fence. She was complaining. So it got to a point where she kept calling the town, and complaining that the chickens are too loud, that the chickens are in her yard, and started complaining about our dogs. The 2 border collies that Courtney takes care of, that are hers now, are dogs that were my parents' dogs. The 1 border collie would run next door and sit with the property owner and just like sit next to him, and he loved it. He loved the dog over there, and my parents would always say, "Well, get him." He's like, "No, leave the dog here. The dog's fine. The dog's fine." They're 2 border collies. They're just a little rambunctious, but they're extremely, extremely friendly. Friendly if you've met our dogs. Sometimes you see me running with them through town, or on the trails. So she started calling the town and complaining massively about the chickens. Too much noise, no manure, they're in her yard, the dogs are scaring her, the dogs are frightening her, the dogs are vicious. Meantime, the dog's been going there for, I don't know, 6-7 years and sitting with the husband, and out there and having a good time. So, of course, her tune has totally changed. So, the way the law is written in the town of Warsing. So, for example, if you're driving 30 miles an hour, let's say the posted speed limit is 30 miles an hour. If you're driving 30 miles an hour, the speed limit's 30. If you drive 30, you're okay. If you drive 35, you're subject to a ticket. If you drive 15, the law's not written in speed limits where, what if you're doing under? Typically not written. What are you doing if you're driving way under the speed limit? Can you get a ticket? No, because the law's not written. It's a totally gray area. Well, this is how the law is written for chickens. If you have 3 acres, you're allowed 30 chickens. Basically, that's the summarization of the law. It doesn't say if you have 1 acre, a half acre, 2.5 acres, how many you're allowed. It just says if you want, you need 3 acres for 30 chickens. That's basically summarizing the law. So there's a big loophole in there. Well, what if you only have 1 acre? Are you allowed 5 chickens, 6 chickens? How many chickens are you actually allowed? So Courtney at the time did have 30 chickens, maybe even a little more than 30 chickens. So town inspector comes over, which has been great, by the way. He's been great to work with, unlike other municipality inspectors who are totally the opposite. The town inspector, Frank, is a very nice guy, and he works with you, and it's great. And he enforces the law. But this was a gray area, so it had to go to court. So we got rid of the roosters, which the law is there's 0 roosters. If there's anything written clearly, it's the law on roosters. There's no roosters allowed in the town of Warsing. No matter if you have 50 acres, 100 acres, 3 acres, you're not allowed to have roosters. Now the thing is, these laws aren't enforced. They're only enforced when somebody complains, right? So that's the only time. They're not out there hunting down people with roosters and counting their acres and chickens. They're not doing that. But when your neighbor calls every day, or 3, 4, 5 days a week, then you have to send out the inspector. And this is what was happening. She just kept calling and calling and calling and calling. She wants chickens gone. So I've had to go to court consistently, like every other month, to make sure that, and it just keeps going. And then, there was a ruling, or there was sort of a ruling, or the judge said something, and then the town attorney goes, "Well, no, that's not the case. We need to go to a hearing on this and that." And then the judge finally said, "You know what? There's a pandemic going on. Mr. Guiliano, please write me a letter of why you think you should be able to keep the chickens." And so I did, and of course they came back and inspected, and the town attorney wanted to go to this hearing and this and that, and said, no, the law's written strong enough. And the judge's like, no, the law's not really written strong enough. I can't enforce something the law's not written strong enough on. So, in the meantime, this lady just calls every day, calls the town and complains. Then she started calling the SPCA and accusing my daughter of abusing animals, which, if you know my daughter, my daughter is the total opposite of that. So then the SPCA shows up, and they show up with their inspector, an animal welfare officer. And so now my daughter has to deal with this person. This person's called in like 2 or 3 times. Then they start calling because they realize this isn't really going anywhere with the court here, that it's a year, that's 6 months later, 7 months later, 8 months later, 9 months later. The chickens are still there. There's less chickens, but they're still there. So now they're calling the DEC and complaining that they'll run off of the manure and all this kind of. So they're calling everybody they possibly can to really sock it to my daughter and myself on these chickens. Meantime, this lady was actually buying eggs from us on a regular basis. Every week she'd buy eggs. She'd complain when the eggs were too small or the eggs weren't cleaned properly. She'd be like, the eggs, something's wrong with the eggs. They're not. They're organic. They're local. They're your neighbor's eggs. They're not all size. They're not coming out of a factory where all the eggs are sized and they're sent, this size, this size, this size, with all different packaging. You get what the chickens lay, and she didn't. That was another thing she would complain about. She'd call and complain, and so literally we'd literally give her like a dozen and a half eggs for the price of a dozen, just to okay, here you go, just take another half dozen, whatever. So back and forth courts, DEC, SPCA, the town inspector coming over all the time, her calling the town, just making this big deal. I go back and forth to court. Because I'm the caretaker, the official caretaker of the property until Courtney officially buys it, the estate. And so the judge finally rules in our favor. And he goes, okay, I'm ruling in your favor. It is a pandemic, right? Chickens are a vital source for eggs, right? It's in a pandemic. Things have changed. And I feel the law isn't written strong enough, so I'm allowing Mr. Guiliano to have, or Courtney to have, I think it's 8 chickens, no more than 8 chickens. 10 chickens. Allowed no more than 10 chickens on this property based upon the acreage and the way the law is written now. So we sort of won, right? We sort of won. But the issue is, what if the town updates the laws? Will she be grandfathered in based upon this decision? And if the town does update the laws, are they going to update them where they're really written out? I think they'll update them where they're much more explicitly written. But here's the bigger picture. If you live in the town of Warsing or any town, and you have 1 acre, why shouldn't you be allowed to have 6 chickens? Why shouldn't you be? If you have 2 acres, why shouldn't you be allowed to have 12 chickens? Why shouldn't you be allowed to have chickens? New Paltz changed this law, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. When this first went down, somebody messaged me and said, take a look what the town of New Paltz did. They had the same similar situation. They updated their laws, and it favored people on smaller parcels of land. So I looked into that. The town didn't really need that piece of information. But so certain areas have updated or are more conscious of the laws written much more explicitly. But if you live in the town of Warsing and you have 1.5 acres of land, why can't you have 6 chickens? Why can't you have 8 chickens? Why can't you have that? If you're in a full scale operation, 100 chickens, and you have this big hen house and doing commercial, that's a different thing. But it is a pandemic. Most people eat eggs, by the way. It is not something new. Most people do eat chicken eggs. They go to the store to buy chicken eggs. So, isn't it your right to have, your own garden and to have some type of food source like that? So that's what I've been facing for the last the last year since the pandemic hit, about going to court back and forth. So hopefully the time being, we're okay. We're allowed to have the 10 chickens. But the problem is the neighbor just doesn't stop. And she just keeps calling every single place possible that has any kind of authority. She's just calling to complain and file whatever she can, just to make things harder for my daughter and for myself. But hopefully the court thing is done, and I guess I've been told by 1 or 2 attorneys that I could actually, now that this is done, I could actually send her a letter and say, hey, if you keep going with this is now considered harassment. The court case is finalized. SPCA has been there. If you keep doing this, this is considered harassment, and we will sue you for harassment. So I guess I hope I don't want to. I don't want to go that route, but you just you might have to, because sometimes people are crazy. So that's the story with court. I've been kind of quiet on that. I've maybe mentioned it like once or twice when I've done Facebook Lives over there with the chickens. But I've been really quiet on that since this whole thing's gone down since last May, a year ago. I think my last court appearance was like last May 19th or something. So it's been a full year that I've been back and forth in court on a regular basis. Drop a comment if you think that you should be allowed to have chickens, if you have 1 acre of land or half an acre of land and you're in the town. My daughter lives in the town. It's on Nevely Road. It's the first house outside of the Nevely property. My parents have lived there since the 90s. Since 1990, my parents bought that house when I was a senior in high school. They bought that house. So hopefully that's resolved, and hopefully I don't have to go back to court, and hopefully there's no more SPCA inspectors showing up unannounced, thinking that they're going to file, showing up because they're following a complaint, a filed complaint by the neighbor. So that's it, folks. Everybody have a great day today. Anything else you should mention, Jamie? Just that we're open. Yeah, check out our website, check out our Facebook. Lots of cool things going on. And whoever has a Mother's Day. Yeah, Mother's Day is coming up. We're not doing anything special for Mother's Day. We usually have a big Sunday brunch for Mother's Day. We haven't done that. It's the second year, of course, we haven't done that. We open at 3 o'clock. We expect to be busy. Outdoor, indoor dining, weather permitting. Hopefully.
Leaves us with very limited tables inside.
Yeah.
So definitely make reservations.
Yep, definitely make reservations if you want to come in.
We're not really doing anything crazy because we really don't know what the weather's going to be like.
Yep, we don't really know what the weather's going to be like. Drop some comments if you have any thoughts on my chicken dilemma here in court. Just drop any questions or thoughts on what your opinion is. Christy's saying, I don't see any problem with it if things are well maintained. Chickens are so beneficial for the land, for the property. Really, really, especially they ticks. They aerate. If you ever see them scratching away, they aerate the property. Of course, they fertilize the property, and they provide a valuable food source. So I don't know the actual statistics of how many people own chickens and the average acreage and things like that. I don't know anything like that, but a lot of people do own chickens. So, and a lot of people bought chickens from my daughter. A lot of people bought chickens from her. So at one point she was hatching. When she had a rooster, she would incubate and hatch, raise them out. I think this 6 weeks. I don't know however long it was, but then she'd sell them like for $15 a chicken and for laying hens, and people loved that. So that's what she was doing. So Ralph's saying nothing wrong with it. Christy's saying you're feeding your neighbor. Yeah, we were feeding our neighbor. She was buying eggs from us until she like totally freaked out and flipped out, and now it's become this person. And when I see her husband, I can't even I see him because he works at a store in town, and in the town, and I'll go to say something, and he won't even look. I'll try to say hi to him, he won't even look at me. These are people that I grew up next to. These are people that I grew up next to, that I'd have conversations with, that I went to school with their son. These are people that it's like I grew up next to them, and I would have conversations with them all the time. And she'd call me about allergies, and I would help her with her diet several times over the course of years. She couldn't eat dairy, she couldn't eat this, she couldn't eat that, so I'd help her with food and give her point in the right direction. And then all of a sudden, just totally turned on this. Yes, that's beneficiary to the land, chickens, and anybody who knows you guys are very organized. Thanks, Ralph. So, all right, folks, that's it. Got to get going. Busy day here in the office, and then Cinco de Mayo. Got to get out for my run before it rains here, which is supposed to be at 11 o'clock. Everybody have an amazing day, and we'll talk to you later.